Well, the 40% of the budget of the Department of Transportation is provided to local governments for road work. There are significant allocations of license fees in the Department of Public Safety that are provided to local governments. We have a local government fund which will grow in this budget by roughly $15 million or so a year. We have a library fund which will grow in this budget. Again, significant portions of our state budget are benefit local governments. The governor mentioned the mental health, the benefit to local behavioral health programs as a result of the decision to extend Medicaid coverage. The state pays most of the salaries of the judges of this state, and so those dollars are in this budget. There's we are increasing the state allocation for the cost of the public defender services that are provided at the local level. The county governments and the transit authorities will benefit from a broadened base of the sales tax that we have talked about. It will not be perhaps a 30% increase, which is the commissioner mentioned, would frankly eliminate the benefits of the tax cut, but we expect 10% growth. And in fact, there's a guarantee of 10% growth. And in the long run, a broader base of the sales tax would be more stable and perhaps have a better growth rate than the narrow base that's goods only. So that's just off the top of my head, there's a short list. And certainly there's more scattered throughout many of the other state agencies.
So are you aware of any counties that are currently looking at a sales tax increase right now? And what, or if there are any, what would they do?
I am aware of at least one that I live in that has been discussing the prospect, but they said they weren't going to do that for more than a year. As they look through the process, I would suggest that the base broadening at a 10% growth rate would address some of those concerns.
How do you institute the cap? By lowering the piggyback rate? And would that change per community?
There is a calculation that will be made that looks at how we feel the base expansion will impact different counties. And then the individual county rates are differentially reduced based on the expected benefit that the service tax base would have in that county. And so those rates are then reduced with the expectation, or with the goal that it would not be revenue neutral, but in fact they would get at least 10% growth. Yes.
Yeah. First of all, I think what the director's saying is we don't need to apply any more reforms right now to nursing homes. Now that has been a big struggle for us, as you know. I was forced to veto a $30 million addition for nursing homes in the MBR. But I want you to know that we monitor the quality of those nursing homes. If we saw quality slipping, because look, we're not against nursing homes. We are in favor of nursing homes when they're the appropriate place for people to be. But if they can stay in their own home at a fifth of the cost, where they can be healthier, happier, and more independent, we should have them do that. And we've reduced the incentive for, well, we've provided an incentive for people to be able to stay at home. And at the same time, we think we're beginning to right-size that entire operation of nursing homes and bringing quality in. You know, Bonnie Cantor's been great on saying if you're in one, there ought to be quality in there. You ought to be able to do a variety of things, request a variety of things that you need. But let me have Greg spend a little bit more time on that.
Because of the significant amount of change in the first budget, we agreed with the legislature that we needed to have a group get together and work out additional reforms together. That created a nursing facility reimbursement subcommittee that then met through the year last year. It included not only representatives of the nursing homes, but also AARP, our own state agencies, a diverse group of people. We were able to reach consensus on a long list of additional reforms to include in this budget. It doesn't change the underlying reimbursement methodology. So that is really no change. But, for example, there are a couple of counties in the state that have always been defined as rural, when really they're urban counties. They get paid too little, so we're making the adjustment in this budget to get them in the right category. That costs some money over the budget. So that's an example of money going into the budget for nursing facilities, but it's to make a correction, it's not to increase the rates. The detail in the budget is basically an accounting of the recommendations made by that subcommittee, all of which we were able to pick up and get included.
Governor, on the Valerie Jarrett component of this, if there were an agreement with the Obama administration on the Medicaid expansion threshold, which other states would come along with you in sort of agreeing to that deal? And do you have any kind of a target threshold that you have in mind as far as being lowered? And how long have you been working on this?
Well, I've been working on going to some of my old pals in Washington and getting them to plead for flexibility. You know, I guess this has been going on, what, been 4 or 5 months, I guess. Really, you know, since the election, I've tried to urge my colleagues to figure out, I mean, you can put a list together of, okay, Joe, you've got that young child, but here's the list your child's going to give you in about 15 years. I want a new Corvette. I want you to pay for an apartment that I want to visit whenever I want to. I want new clothes every week. Okay, you can put a list like that together. But the question is, what is a reasonable list of reforms that you might get? And in Medicaid, we have felt all along there were a couple things. One of them is our ability to continue to collect the sales tax on managed care, which we're going to be able to do for, we think, a couple more years, but you know, then beyond that, we're not sure. That's a problem for the state. The other part of it is, what do you do? I wanted to go to 100% of poverty and let the exchange come down from 100 and above. Well, this doesn't quite, I mean, what we're talking about doesn't quite do it, but it allows the government to, if we can work this out, Joe, again, I want to stress, this is a big if. It allows people between 100 and 138 to buy into the exchange with tax dollars that we recapture from Washington. And we are in the early stages of the details of this. So after the time of my trying to touch base with administration officials and trying to work with Republican governors, out of the blue comes the call from Valerie telling me this is in response to your call a couple of months ago. And, you know, she's a pretty high-level official. I mean, very high. I think it represents, if we can carry this out and if it'll work. And here's the problem with it. We don't know what it costs to go on the exchange. Okay, we just don't, they don't know yet either. And we don't know what the long-term impact of this is. And if the cost of going on the exchange is, you know, 2 or 3 times, I mean, are they going to give us a waiver? We don't know. But what we do know is they reached out. That they reached out and said, look, let's put our people together. Greg and McCarthy were very nervous about this whole thing. Because when it went to the dual eligibles, let me tell you what this is. This is a rational way of where you put people in the proper setting, and when there's savings, one government claims it over another. The feds didn't want it, they want all the money, and we want to share in it, and it took a long time to get it done. We don't have a long time on this. And regardless as to whether they can buy into the exchange or not, based on this new era of flexibility, is what I'll call it, I still think it is in Ohio's interest to extend this coverage to the working poor. This is going to make it very interesting for the legislature, for the speaker, for the finance chairman in the House and the Senate. But there's a lot of unknowns, Joe, about this whole program. What I know is at the end of the day, we must do what's going to benefit Ohio. And, but flexibility is always better than inflexibility. And again, I'd just like to say for a second, this was Valerie Jarrett and I talking about this, and she deserves credit for being responsive. And you know, it's a good thing to see. I was excited to call the speaker about this. He was pleased to hear about this. I've talked to the Senate leader about this over the weekend. Just have to see how it all plays out and not get our hopes up, but to keep our eye right focused on what we want to achieve in the bigger picture and see what the details are.
Do you have any partners in other states that you can name?
I frankly, Joe, it just got to the point where I just needed to do what I do, and I know I don't want to get. If I name names, and all of a sudden I've had lots of conversations with a number of my colleagues, and as you know, I was out in Davos. Didn't you have a beard? Yeah, I thought you had a beard there. Out in Davos. No, seriously, when I was out there, there were two governors there. You remember? One was the governor from Delaware, who was the head of the National Governors Association, and the other one is my pal John Hickenlooper, the governor of Colorado. And I had conversations with them about all this. Look, I have some friends in the administration who I worked with in '97 on the budget agreement. The thing that's been difficult is the lack of really good, serious conversation between all parties around this plan. I got to tell you that when this insurance reform comes, we could get clobbered out here. I've also had conversations with administration officials about the issue of fracking. You know, the administration that can come in here and disrupt that industry. You want to worry about a severance tax, that's the least you ought to worry about if you want to protect the industry, it's that. And by the way, I want to tell you, we have to constantly upgrade the laws as in regard to that industry and environmental concerns, because we do have environmental concern right now. It's going to have to be dealt with, and we will, because we want this industry to be strong. It's a very important part of the future of our state. So Joe, to make a long story short, conversation is always good. And I'm pleased we had it.